Sapodillas are generational assets. Plant one, and it is going to occupy your landscape for decades, outlasting fences, sheds, and sometimes the house itself. But walking into a nursery and buying a tree labeled simply as Sapodilla is a massive gamble. You have no idea if that plant will top out at 8 feet or 40, or if the fruit will taste like brown sugar or wet sand. To understand why, you have to look at how the tree was propagated. Growing a generic sapodilla from a seed requires intense patience and a lot of luck. This chart compares time to fruit. Seeds take 7 to 10 years for a first harvest. Grafted trees cut that wait to just 2 to 4 years. That time savings is why the 12 cultivars evaluated today are exclusively grafted, guaranteeing precise traits. Selecting a specific named cultivar removes the guesswork. It ensures exactly what you're planting, saving you from wasting a decade watering a 40-foot mistake. Across all 12 varieties, every grower have to navigate one primary conflict: tree vigor versus fruit quality. Highly vigorous trees pack on size rapidly and push out huge volumes of fruit. But that massive yield often comes with a higher latex content and a distinctly gritty texture in the flesh. On the flip side, trees optimized for an ultra-smooth texture and a manageable dwarf size demand meticulous pruning, and they strictly limit your overall harvest volume. There is no objectively perfect Sapodilla tree. There is only the right tree for your specific spatial footprint and climate limits. For the urban or patio gardener, space is measured in inches, not acres. If you fit this profile, you need a dwarf cultivar. Varieties like Silas Woods or Macaque are the standard bearers here. On our comparison matrix, Silas Woods and Macaque hit the marks for a dwarf growth habit while maintaining surprisingly high yields. Because they stay compact, these varieties thrive permanently in large containers without becoming root-bound. But that high yield creates a major behavioral problem. These dwarf trees tend to overproduce fruit for their small frame. This creates mandatory labor. You have to aggressively and manually thin the fruit clusters. If you leave them alone, the tree will exhaust itself, stunting its own growth and yielding tiny, unusable fruit. Opting for a dwarf variety means you get to keep your small spatial footprint, but you pay for it with strict manual fruit management. Other growers don't care about sheer volume. They prioritize a perfectly smooth texture and maximum sweetness above everything else. The Alano cultivar is the benchmark for this gourmet category. Its defining feature is a high Brick score, the standard scientific measurement for sugar content. Adding Alano to the matrix, the profile looks very different from dwarf types. It registers high Bricks and 0 grit, sitting solidly in the slow growth category. This deliberate, sluggish growth contrasts with standard feral types, which aggressively shoot upward. Achieving that grit-free, brown sugar consistency requires strict micronutrient management. The soil chemistry has to be dialed in perfectly to maintain optimal fruit development. Planting a gourmet cultivar means accepting a slower-growing tree and a strict fertilization schedule to achieve peak culinary quality. For homesteaders or commercial growers operating with acreage, space isn't an issue. These setups demand large, vigorous standard varieties like Prolific or Brown Sugar. Putting these on the matrix completes the picture. Prolific and Brown Sugar score high for massive size and resilience, but carry a higher grit marker. They demand 30 feet of spacing to thrive, paying off with early yields and serious environmental resilience. The primary trade-off here is entirely textural. The fruit from these massive producers retains a higher latex content and a coarser, grittier flesh compared to Asian dwarf cultivars. Commercial varieties solve the equations for total volume and hardiness, but they compromise on premium eating texture. Choosing your tree shouldn't induce analysis paralysis. It comes down to a strict process of elimination based on your local constraints rather than personal preference. The first node on the flowchart asks a basic question: are you planting in a pot or in the ground? If the answer is a pot, your path ends instantly. You are restricted to the dwarf and high-yield cultivars. If you are planting in the ground, you move to the second node. Do you experience winter frost? If yes, you are pushed toward cold-tolerant varieties. If no, you are cleared to plant tropical gourmet cultivars. Strictly following this flowchart forces you to respect the hard limits of your local microclimate, rather than buying a tree based on internet hype. If your yard has less than 15 feet of clearance, you must strictly filter for the dwarf category. If you want to guarantee zero grit fruit for fresh eating, you have to accept lower total harvest weights. And if you need to maximize canopy size to provide dense shade and sheer volume, plant a vigorous commercial standard and accept a coarser fruit. Don't plant for the fruit you wish you had. Plant the specific variety engineered for the yard you actually have.